Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sabrina Kofer, and on behalf of Choice and ACRL, I'd like to welcome you to today's program. Class is in session, the library's role in OER adoption, which is sponsored by CloudSource from SirsiDynix. This session is one in a series of sponsored webinars from Choice and ACRL that addresses new ideas and developments of interest to the academic library community. Now I'll just put a couple links in the chat where you can register for upcoming webinars and watch previous webinar recordings. Before we get started, I'd like to point out just a few features of the webinar software. All attendees who join the presentation are automatically muted and your cameras are off, so don't worry about generating any noise or feedback. We've got that taken care of for you. In the main area of the screen, you can follow along with the presentation materials. To adjust the size of the slides or video, you can use the divider in the middle of the screen to slide the sizes to your liking. Next slide. We are using the Q&A feature today. Please use it to ask questions of our speakers or to share any comments. We'll answer any questions we have time for at the end of the presentation, so please type your questions in the Q&A module as they occur to you. You can also use the upvote feature to highlight questions you like or would like to be addressed. Next slide, please. Also, there's closed captioning available for today's session. To toggle the automated captions on or off, please use the CC button on the bottom panel of your screen. Last, please note that we are recording today's program, and everyone who registered should receive a follow-up email with a link to the archive version and where to access today's slides. And with that, we are ready to get started, so I will hand it over to Mariska.
Thank you so much, Sabrina. Right. Thank you to all of you for taking valuable time out of your day today to be here for our webinar, Classes in Session, the library's role in OER adoption. I'm Mariska Connolly. I'm the CloudSource Director of Partnerships and Communications here at SirsiDynix, which means I work a lot with our content partners and our customers. Part of that is so that we can better understand your needs and where we fit into the landscape of your library software and services. So I'm a former academic librarian, and I have worked in systems, e-resources, and some instruction for both academic and medical libraries. Later in this presentation, you're going to also meet my colleague, Rick Branham, who's the VP of Pre-Sales Academic and Content Solutions. And he's been on the CloudSource product ever since conception and has been working with libraries for his entire career, I think since right out of college.
Yeah, in college.
In college too. So let me start by addressing the elephant in the room, the high cost of textbooks. A few quick facts from educationaldata.org, who synthesized a couple of dozen sources to provide an overview of available data on both textbook costs and their impact on students. So the textbook publishing industry is valued at $3.18 billion. And just a side note, three publishers control over 80% of the U.S. college textbook market. That's McGraw-Hill, Pearson, and Cengage. The average college student pays, on top of their textbooks, $285 for course materials in an academic year. Again, this is in addition to the textbooks. 25% of students report they worked extra hours to pay for their textbooks and materials. 11% report skipping meals in order to afford books and course materials. And 65% of college students skipped buying textbooks because they were too expensive. And this is a very familiar story. This graph here gives you an idea of the average cost of textbooks, and these are for students over the last decade or so, starting in about 2010. So a few things to note. The availability of ebooks has helped a bit, as they often cost less, and sometimes as much as 50% less. But on the flip side, they're effectively single-use purchases since they can't be easily resold or passed on to classmates. This averages across areas of study, so students in STEM are often paying a lot more for for their textbooks, some of which are as high as $300 or $400 each. Two-year institutions have seen the most increase in textbook costs, and some of those students might be the ones who can afford it the least. Last year, the average cost for textbooks for a four-year institution was around $1,200 per student, and the average cost for a two-year institution was around $1,400 per student. If you're curious about the stats here, my sources are on the last page of the slide, so definitely look at those later. So what do students typically do when they can't afford the textbook? This question is of particular interest to me as I both taught college courses and spent many years advising undergraduates as just part of my library, other duties as assigned. And the question of textbook costs came up in advising meetings year after year. I've had students sit in my office and ask me to check the textbook cost for classes they're thinking about registering for before they will actually add them to their schedule, because sometimes that's a deciding factor. So what happens when students can't afford a textbook is that they attempt to mitigate the issue in a variety of ways. They might take a different class entirely, maybe buy an older edition, and I did this a lot myself as a student, but those older editions can sometimes be missing content or have chapters in different order. So if they're assigned to read chapter 4, that might actually be chapter 6 in the new in the new edition rather. Sometimes they share with other classmates, and college students are not the most reliable folks. Sometimes they have a lot on their plate. Often they rent, which has its own issues that we'll touch on a little bit later. They might also try to manage without a textbook at all or borrow from the library, which is one of the reasons why most libraries I've worked at had a policy of never buying textbooks or keeping them on reserve for short in-house checkouts only, kind of those 2-hour rentals, checkouts rather. It doesn't stop students from trying to borrow them through ILL as well. And the outcome of attempting to mitigate this damage? Well, lower grades. If you can't read the material, you obviously can't do well. Dropping courses, changing majors. I know biology and chem and a lot of the STEM fields are just more expensive to major in, or just giving up entirely. If you offer an alternative model, will still students use it? Signs point to yes. Last year, and this is just one of many studies, Pascal in South Carolina did a survey of 778 students from 19 institutions to ask them about the cost of textbooks and how it's impacted their educational experience. They report many of the same mitigation steps that I mentioned on the previous slide: not purchasing some material, choosing a different course, or simply taking fewer courses and delaying graduation, which, as you know, sometimes leads to not graduating at all. About 52% of these surveyed students reported having taken a course that used only free open materials. And the good news is that of that 52%, an impressive 94% reported positive experiences. You can't get 94% of college students to grade a whole lot. And that leads to the question, what can libraries do to help in this effort? When I took on creating a graduate level course pack in 2014, it was in collaboration with a faculty member and an instructional designer. This is the folks I was collaborating with from our scheduled page from, I believe it was a Teaching and Learning Conference at UGA in 2015. And we presented on our findings from a post-course student survey and talked a little bit about our methodology. I was the e-resources librarian at the time and liaison to the College of Allied Health at the Medical College of Georgia. My colleague Vahe Boyan was teaching 2 courses, Healthcare Financial Management and Qualitative Methods in Health, which was basically research methods. He decided it would be a great opportunity to try to do this with only open access and Creative Commons materials. He was kind of on the cutting edge at that point. It wasn't a really common thing to do. And it was trickier than it seemed when we first went into this project. The instructional designer, Gio Laws, and I took a copyright course with Duke and Emory online. We did a lot of work collaboratively to try and align what was in the course packet to the desired outcome. So our course packet was everything that we found to be the reading material for that course. Then we had to figure out how to deliver it to the students. It took us really all summer to put this project together. This is the course page in the LMS. It looks very dated now. We used a lot of individual chapters and individual academic papers to keep the cost for creating this low, though we did have a modest grant from Affordable Learning Georgia through Galileo. That's what paid for our copyright course, for example. Textbooks and course packets are certainly possible to put together, but require a fair amount of support, expertise, skill, and time to get them right. Fortunately, it's gotten a lot easier since 2014, and we will talk about that shortly as well. Let's take a look at some concrete examples of textbook alternatives. So according to Open Syllabus Analytics, Calculus 8th edition by James Stewart was the most frequently assigned textbook in 2019. That's their most recent data set. Its list price at the time was $356 for the hardcover. It was not a good candidate for either sharing, renting, or buying used because the access codes it came with were one-time use only. One person, one time, that's it. However, CloudSource OA's index has 67 OER textbooks on calculus, and I filtered to those suitable for only college and upper division classes, and all of these have Creative Commons license with no login required. According to that same source, Campbell's 10th edition biology was the 5th most frequently assigned textbook for 2019. I actually have an older version of this kicking around on one of my bookshelves at home somewhere, because it's hard to sell them back when you spend $259 for the hardcover and the resale values are terrible. I think I was going to get 25 bucks back for it for turning in this gently used textbook. And this one here offered a 3-ring binder of loose pages as an alternative way to get the book, and it would save you about 100 bucks or so, but the reviews on Chegg and Amazon and other textbook sites frequently talked about how easy it was to damage and that the pages frequently came out and were lost. CloudSource OA has 91 OER textbooks on biology, suitable again for college and upper division classes with no login needed. And we haven't talked much about rental books, but I promise we come back to that. Human Anatomy and Physiology, 11th edition, was the 3rd most frequently assigned textbook. Its list price is $299, but it's frequently rented from sites like Chegg. The immediate downside to doing this is obvious and might not be a big deal to some students, especially if you're just taking this one class as part of your core and not continuing along the area of study. Obviously, you don't own the book and you have to return it after the semester. However, it's a bit more insidious when you read the fine print. Rental copies and used books don't come with the access codes or the lab manual. You pretty much have to buy the new book if you want that content. And again, the CloudSource numbers, 27 OER textbooks on human anatomy and physiology, which is a lot more narrow of a subject. And these are, again, suitable for college and upper division. Again, no login, no rentals, and you don't need any access codes. All right, so I would love to do a quick poll question as we come in here. So how does your institution currently use open educational resources? And multiple responses is encouraged here. Do you offer courses with only OER resources, right, or OER right now? Do you educate your faculty, like do informational sessions, maybe have a page on your LibGuides? Do you offer incentives, or does your college offer incentives to faculty? Do you support them in the creation of course material? Maybe you don't offer it right now. Or there are other things. And if you have something creative, please reach out to me afterwards because I'd love to hear what you're doing. We'll give it just another moment for people to answer this question. Here we go. Let's see. All right, educating faculty, that's wonderful. That was even just 10 or 15 years ago, I feel like it was just whispers on the wind, and the library is just such an important use of that, such important use of faculty knowledge there. Okay, support and creation. That's higher than I thought it was going to be. That's fantastic. And open course and offer courses with open access resources. All right, I'd love to hear from the others later. Let me close this. All right. So let's step back and look at the larger picture with open access. So every year we have access to more and more high quality OA and OER content. So between OA articles for course packs and open access textbooks, a lot of this high quality cost for textbooks can be mitigated with some help from the library rather than skipping meals. So let's look at OA by the numbers. There's a lot of open access out there, a whole lot. Over 65 million scholarly resources are open access, and this includes articles, books, e-textbooks, data sets. 51 million of these are scholarly articles, and 61% of all scholarly articles published since 2017 are OA, and 3.8 million open articles were published in 2023 alone. So that makes 67% of scholarly articles published last year freely available. And we would love to eventually do some data analytics on books as well. So definitely attend a future webinar when we manage to do that. But only 16% of all these articles are indexed in the directory of open access journals. So this is really important to point out because I think a lot of librarians, myself included, think if you go into your discovery layer and check on that DOAJ box to turn on that collection, you've got it covered. But the truth is you've just got that 16% and you're missing out on the majority of open access content. And of course, all of the e-textbooks and supplementary material as well. The graph here on the right illuminates an anticipated shift in scholarly communication by 2040, where if we continue on the same trajectory we're at now, we estimate nearly 100% of peer-reviewed articles are expected to adopt open access licensing of some type. And the primary driver behind this trend lies with funder mandates. So granting agencies are requiring OA publication models. Entities such as the National Institutes of Health and all federal government agencies supporting research stipulate this condition. The European Commission has similar expectations. And with the Nelson memo that was reissued in 2022, the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy is requiring OA for federally funded publications and data sets be made publicly available without delay or embargo, is the wording, by the end of next year, 2025. Private organizations are influencing the research landscape as well, including the Gates Foundation and the Wellcome Trust. They've similarly committed to the OA cause. So researchers seeking their support are obligated to publish their findings under OA licensing, reinforcing a collective commitment to unrestricted access to scholarly output. And we see when we look at the top ranked journals that they have very high OA publication rates. These are from the top multidisciplinary journals earlier this year as ranked by Cimego. Most of them are more than half OA and many are just approaching fully OA. We see this discipline by discipline. The higher the rank in the journal and the discipline, the more likely it is to have a high open access publication rate. And a lot of these researchers are also publishing in books and e-textbooks as well. And the largest publishers of open access content are the same publishers that have historically published the bulk of scholarly articles. They have high editorial standards and are not lowering them for OA. These journals publishers will always want to publish the best authors with the most interesting research. Those are the folks that are getting grants. Most of them are not pure OA journals. They're what we call hybrid. These publishers have made room for OA articles in their traditional subscription products. They reside right next to articles that require access through a paid subscription, which means you'd need a subscription to access any of it at all. Now, at this point, it probably wouldn't surprise you to know that the impact of so much open access publishing has changed the composition of many academic databases, such as this one that many libraries subscribe to. This popular multidisciplinary database that I will not call out by name contains about 70% OA content if you compare the closed to open access articles at the article level published since 2017. So the most recent cutting edge scholarship. And yes, this represents a real database. We've done article to article comparisons on so many major databases, and the amount of OA is significant in most of them. However, you won't see any of this content if you don't subscribe to the journal and it's not in the DOAJ. Most discovery platforms just don't index the just the OA portion of hybrid journals. It's an all or nothing situation, which means you have to subscribe to get access to all of it, including the open content. With those 65 million open resources, there's more than just academic journals. As I mentioned, there are more than 102,000 of those, both fully open and hybrid, that publish OA, but it's more than just the DOAJ. There's also 82,000 plus ebooks and e-textbooks and 46K of other resources, including full courses and lesson plans and tutorials and study guides, and just tons of additional great information in there to support those folks who are taking college and university level courses. When Gio, Vahe, and I created our course pack, finding these resources was arduous and time consuming, and figuring out if we were allowed to use them was another hurdle, but it doesn't have to be that way anymore. So let's do one more poll question before I turn this webinar over to my colleague Rick to show you what CloudSource OA has to offer. What innovations would make OA and OER discovery easier for your users? Again, select many of these if you'd like to. So a comprehensive OA index, as much content as possible in there. No authentication or login to make a low barrier to entry. Easy to see copyright status, advanced searching, including Boolean, Easy to manage from the staff side, easy to manage your lists within the search interface, integration into your discovery layer or catalog to make it easier to find. And if you think of something else, again, reach out to me. Let's see what we've got here. Comprehensive OA index, yeah, that's important for sure. And integration to discovery layer catalog, definitely top this. But I'm unsurprised by most of this. More than 50% of you would, the how easy it is to see the copyright status, to be able to access the materials, to be able to search effectively. That's all huge. So thank you. All right, and I am going to turn this over to Rick to talk a little bit about discovering OER and how much easier it is now than when I used to do it myself.
Sorry, it helps if I unmute myself. I'm just talking away.
That's okay.
Thank you so much, Mariska. Great job, and thank you all for participating in the polls and answering or asking questions. We will get to those when we go to the Q&A at the end. But I want to spend just a moment reviewing the what CloudSource has to offer, and we'll take a look at the interface there. Hang on, let me just get my screen adjusted here. Okay, so CloudSource, as Mariska mentioned, is our new content platform from SirsiDynix. It's part of our overall library services platform called Blue Cloud, in case you've heard of that. It offers comprehensive aggregation, enrichment, management, and discovery of e-resources for all library types and all types of resources, not just articles, even though that's the predominant amount of OA content. As Mariska stated, there's a lot of OER included in that index. So the OA collection is one option. This was released end of December 2021, so it's a fairly new platform. And we're already up to over 65 million open access resources. Again, articles, proceedings, reports, etc., but also open ebooks and e-textbooks and other open educational resources like online courses, lesson plans, videos, those types of things, which we'll look at in a moment. We this summer launched CloudSource Plus, which expands that OA index by adding about 1 billion resources. These are subscription resources and also options for on-demand fulfillment through two of our partners, Copyright Clearance Center's Get It Now service and Research Solutions Article Galaxy Scholar. So that expanded index includes non-OA scholarly content. It includes magazines and trade journals, non-OA ebooks and textbooks, multimedia sources, and news sources. So we're not just simply aggregating the metadata and passing that along. We've actually built a whole platform of smart tools that make it easy to that expand on that data by providing a more rich discovery experience. So we're adding to the rather thin metadata we start with all the things you see here, like publication information, and we're using some AI tools in conjunction with OpenAlex to add field of study and coming soon concepts to article level data, subject headings, abstracts, more author information, citation information, web reviews from dozens of sources, and other related resources. So let's take a quick look at the discovery interface. Again, 65 million resources, more than 100,000 journals. It includes OER content, and textbooks are part of that. And I'll mention some of the various features as we walk through this demonstration. So note that you can do a general keyword search or choose a specific field to search on. I'm going to search for climate change, and very quickly got back about 300,000 results. We do have a hook into Wikipedia so that you can easily get a grounding for whatever it is you've searched and use disambiguation tools. The filters further help you narrow down your choices. And again, this is on the search climate change, the numbers that you see there. You can limit by format, by the peer-reviewed status, by publication dates, by field of study. Again, a lot of that being AI-generated fields of study. publication name, languages, the specific Creative Commons license, mesh headings. And then for OER filters, you got course level, material type, primary user, and then publisher as well. So let's go ahead and limit by peer reviewed, yes. And that'll filter out some of those news sources. And let's also search within the results for hurricanes. We were just in Charleston last week, and of course, we see the effects of climate change on the frequency and intensity of hurricanes, further narrowing down by recent pub dates. And you see at the top of the list here, here's an article I want to look at more from Science Advances. Oh, and by the way, this little link here, link icon, lets you capture the search strategy and quickly drop that onto a LibGuide or a course page. You see the resource stats I'm pointing to. You see the CC license, the peer-reviewed status, the type of material, and citation metrics, and also Buzz, which are web reviews. Sorry for my dog. One click took me to full text, and you also see additional links for that article, including some pre-pub versions if available. A very easy link to get to the publication page. I've also can add that item to a list. You can add those things in batch as well. You can build your citations one at a time or in batch. We support over 2,500 citation styles that you can choose from. You can put in style notes, link to a style guide. The user can annotate the citation before saving it. If they want to make notes on why they captured this, you can make stylistic changes to the citation, including adding things like a hyperlink to the DOI. And then I can copy that right into my document. I can export it into a RIS format. You can also capture a permalink if you want to bookmark or share this, and that includes a link straight to the full text. We do integrate with third-party services like browsing from Third Iron. We also integrate with LibKey from Third Iron. We have a great partnership with them. And then further, let's take a look at the detailed view for this record. That further illustrates how much we've done to expand this metadata, the publication information, more on the license. I'm going to flick through a few detailed hits to show you this example. You see how the field of study that's been really fleshed out by our partnership with OpenAlex. Back to that first record, again, you see more links to different versions of that article, abstracts, author notes, references. Now the references you can click straight into. Likewise with the cited by articles, you can go to the detail link, the publisher page, or by clicking that little list button at the top, I can open all of these in a separate tab and then browse through each of those easily. Buzz, again, those are web reviews from dozens of sources. Here's a news article from phys.org about, it refers back to this article that I'm looking at. And let's close that. And I want to then narrow in on books and other OER. So our index, like I said, is actively growing with our partnerships that we've established. So we work with OAPN and DOAB. Sometimes there are special collections not already in our collection, and we'll add them directly, like a collection from MIT Press. We work with Open Textbook Library, and they also are aggregating textbooks from OpenStax and Merlot, I believe, and other learning resources. We pay to support ISKME to get a regular feed from OER Commons, and we'll take a look at those here in a second. So let's close this detailed view, and I'm going to do, and by the way, we do advanced searching or publication level searching as well, but I'm going to just do another general keyword search for social media teenagers, and over 200,000 hits returned. Now, again, I can narrow down. I'm going to click format books and book chapters, and that narrowed my results down to 3,700 results. And you see the second hit, young people, social media and health. Again, a little more information about that item. And as with the articles, one click takes me straight to the full text. The student can then download that, share it with others, and come back to that again and again without those frustrating authentication barriers. Let's close that and do another search. Let's say I'm a student that needs some more resources for a calculus course they're taking. And rather than narrow down to a more defined or filter, I'm going to use OER in general. And then I can use my OER filters to drill down to course level, material type. I'm going to choose textbook. And I've got 124 results on calculus textbooks. And let's click view on this second one. Now, I didn't filter down to specific upper level courses, but that is an option if you want to drill down to just those college level courses. So this mooculus may not be suitable for a college level student, but you do have those filters. So let's search for another topic, let's say renewable energy. Let's say I'm preparing for a presentation to give in my course, and I'm looking for some animated graphics, videos, etc. So I'm going to filter down to community college, college upper division, career technical, graduate levels. So I want a little more high level resource to use. And then if I scroll down, you see I've got an animated video that looks like the thing after, and click view. And that's going to take me to that Creative Commons page where I can then open the video. And I did check, this is available in multiple languages, although I think it's showing the German. Okay, so I want to highlight some key takeaways, and then we'll get into your questions that you posed. Textbooks are expensive. Mariska did a fine job of illustrating some of the challenges there, and I dare say they're not getting cheaper. The libraries have a role in helping to mitigate that and provide resources that could be used by instructors and in an effort to bring these costs down. The CloudSource Index offers more than 65 million resources, including a rapidly growing OER collection. It's just part of the index. Discovery can be easy, and I hope I showed you just how easy it can be. One place to search all these, and it's worth knowing that the resources we're searching are from vetted quality sources. It's just not a wide open Google search where you might be getting a lot of junk that you don't want your students using. OA can be your foundation of your collections. We can help you to develop new collection strategies with an eye toward saving your institution money, saving your students money, and still providing access to high quality materials. All right, so it looks like we had another poll question. Rishka, you want to jump in and talk through
Hi.
the
I
question?
sure will. Yeah. Just to kind of get our QA started, and we've got a ton of it already here. How important is OA and OER in your collection strategy? I feel like with the answers to some of the earlier ones, I've got an idea of what we might see here. But everything from if you are not an e-resources librarian, if you're not a director, use your best guess on this one. Have you heard it discussed a lot? Do you have LibGuide pages dedicated to it? Does it seem like something that's got that is a priority at your institution, or something you just haven't really dived into yet? I'll give it a moment for people to answer. Let's see. So we generally, we've got a couple of folks in here who haven't had a chance to really think about it. So hopefully this kind of gets some gears moving. But it looks like, for most people, it's either convenient or it actually is an active priority here. So we've got a little bit of a bell curve with most people saying we include it when it's convenient, which I think is actually such an important thing to say because librarians have hats and hats and hats and hats. And if it's a lot of work, had we not been doing it over the summer, we wouldn't have done that course pack. And I had 2 partners, so I get it completely. So hopefully this kind of product makes it easier. Let's flip over here to the next slide. I think we might have information on that one. Oh, awesome. It just does.
This is
It's the next one that has good information. But we have so many good questions, Rick. I cannot wait to dive into these. So, Bonita asks, why is it so much more expensive at two-year schools? And I think that's such an interesting question. I have an educated guess or two for this, although I'll have to dig more into some of the studies because I think there were 22 studies that were looked at for that kind of overarching examination. My thought is part of it. So let me tell you, I was a first-year college student and had no idea for the first 2 years of college that you didn't have to just buy your books at the bookstore. And I suspect, some of that might factor into it. I think the folks who are going to four-year colleges or graduate school, a lot of times they're, second or third generation or more. They have a good idea of how things work. So I think part of it is that they simply know the ins and outs. And sometimes, yes, that does mean them going and finding pirated copies of things. We know it happens, so we can't deny it. And I also think a lot of the more advanced textbooks have a higher chance of having alternative versions available, whether that be an ebook or a 3-ring binder version. There's just a little bit more options available for those higher level textbooks. So I think a lot of the folks at two-year schools are just kind of stuck in a bad situation. They've got one version that they can buy for a class. They don't necessarily know what their options are for getting it in other ways aside from new from the bookstore. And there may be other factors at play here, but that's my guess. You have any thoughts on that, Rick? Mhm.
no, I was gonna touch on some of the same points, and again,
Uh-huh.
it's conjecture. I don't think there
Mhm.
is a good
Oh,
answer.
completely. Yeah. Agreed. And I'm curious if some of you have theories on that as well. The second question here, when you say textbooks, are you including the purchase of supplemental electronic content like the practice software? So this is really a whole different approach to doing uh, textual support for courses. There's a lot of push towards having the study guides and the online, test material and that being a whole different thing or being electronic. And I think it's been a little bit of an economic decision by a lot of the publishers because, if you can get a used textbook, then they're getting nothing from that purchase. So I think a lot of that is sort of artificially generated. So when you approach it from a purely OER and OA perspective, one of your faculty members may choose to use one of our Stacks textbooks, for example, that we have in our collection, but then pick supplemental material from the from the additional OER material like study guides and videos and some of the things I'm sorry that Rick showed you there. So it wouldn't necessarily be that they would be approaching it buying a textbook with supplemental material. We would just, there are options for providing that kind of thing to your students without needing to go with a packet. I remember my kids in college had all these logins for different publisher sites so that they could get into like the answer key that when I was in college was just in the back of the book. Like it's artificially generated additional income, I think, for the publishers. Maybe that's me being a little harsh. Yeah. Yeah. Um, let's see. I'm jumping in and answering all these, Rick. I'm so sorry. Please interrupt me.
I'll jump in if I need to, but you're
Yeah.
better qualified to answer these questions.
Do you expect U.S. government support for OA to change, Alyssa? This was the thing. We just got back from the Charleston conference last week, and it was just that and AI was on everybody's mind. And yeah, we're about to have a big change at the top in our country, and the Nelson memo doesn't go into effect till next year. So I understand the fear. I really do. I dare I say I don't know if they're organized enough to immediately target something like this, but even if they were to do so right now, even if for some reason the Nelson memo was struck and didn't take effect next year, we have so much momentum already. I mean, 67% of the scholarly articles that were published last year were open. I don't think that there's any stopping this train. We're already a little bit behind the European Union because they already don't do the 1-year embargoes for most of their grant-funded research. I think there could be speed bumps put in the way that might slow things down, but they're not stopping it. I'm not at this point, unless something drastic happens, I have no fear of that.
I would agree. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. And Pamela asks, I find that students go to pirate libraries like LibGen for textbooks. How do you still sell library access over this type of use? And I think a lot of this is the security of knowing that that content is going to be there because going to pirate sites to get this information, it's an unreliable way of doing things. I understand with how much they spend on textbooks. I don't condone, but I understand why they do it. But I think having faculty choose textbooks from the beginning that are available in OA that are, it can be linked with a permalink and then they know it's always going to be there and it can be accessed consistently and it can be plugged into LibGuides. You just make it easier. And it's a little bit of a culture shift, but rather than jumping around the I don't know, gray web, I don't know if a dark web really for online libraries, but it's a lot more unstable and not great for your computers probably to be downloading things from pirate sites. But you make it easier for them to come through the library. That would kind of be my answer to that. And it might take a little bit of re-education, but if it's easier, safer, and more reliable to go through OER textbooks, then that's got a lot more appeal,
Hmm.
in
And
my
I think
humble opinion.
students are always going to take the happy path, the easiest path, and
Absolutely.
you make it easier for them. Just provide that permalink that's reliable, and without a login to download these resources, I think you're going to find that you're successful in keeping them from trying to find it on pirate sites.
Mhm. Especially if they don't need to, because an open textbook's being used from the beginning. Right, Catherine, is the policy about libraries not purchasing textbooks just industry practice, or does it have something to do with copyright? Policy about libraries not purchasing textbooks. I'm not sure if I understand the question on that one. Policy about libraries not purchasing textbooks, just industry practice. Oh, yes, I do. Oh, that refers, I'm so sorry. I know which slide that refers to. I worked at 3 different academic institutions, so it's a small sample set, but just talking to other librarians, it doesn't seem to be something that's done very commonly at most libraries. And there's a couple of reasons. One of them, you purchase a textbook for, Biology 101. The first student that checks it out doesn't return it first semester, so it's no good to anyone else. Or you buy the 8th edition and the 9th edition is used the next semester, you've immediately got something outdated. So that policy about not purchasing textbooks, I don't think it's, everyone, but I think a lot of people do. So most of the librarians I've talked to and all the institutions I've worked at are real hesitant about buying textbooks for their library. And when they do, it's, we've been using the same, civilization textbook for, 5 years, and we're going to put it on reserve so students can come in and read the chapter they need, but we're not going to let them necessarily check it out. But those same students that used to come into my office would go, can we look at, WorldCat? Can we see if somebody has that textbook? Can I request it through ILL? They worked so hard to try not to have to spend 200 or 300 bucks on a textbook for sure.
Great.
Yeah.
What about Trisha's question? Did I miss
Oh,
that? Uh,
Um, any impact on the big publishers? Oh, the antitrust lawsuit. So, just to refresh anyone on the call who might not know that, I didn't absolutely skip that one. This is a group of academic scientists who have brought a federal antitrust lawsuit against kind of the big six: Elsevier, Walters Kluwer, Wiley, Sage. And some of the things that they're claiming in there is that, there has been some fishy business to kind of not, I mean, part of it's not compensating scholars who do things like peer review. Part of it is the high cost for article publishing charges, which, the part of the accusation is that they're taking away from actual research funds, by charging some people $7,000 to publish an article. So do we expect any impact from that? This is such an interesting question, and I'm not a lawyer, but I think that those scientists that have put this antitrust suit out are really they're saying what everyone already knows, and I think it's really hard to deny that's what's going on. But I think this goes back to the fact that this train is already moving. We're already being pushed to publish more OA. I think the publishers are holding on really tight right now and trying really hard to continue to make good profits. But that slide where I said it was, billions of dollars that the textbook industry is worth, it's even more on the academic publishing side. There's been a lot of money made for a long time. And again, we live in a capitalist society. I get it, but I think they're going to push back for it. But I don't have a magic ball to know what this antitrust um, lawsuit will do. Have you thought about this at all, Rick?
I just think it adds fuel to the fire with,
Mhm.
not only libraries, but the public in general being fed up with these unfair practices and the high costs of
Yeah.
research that is, for the most part, paid by taxpayers. So I think it's driving that sentiment of unfairness and pushing people more toward being OA curious and looking more into what the OA industry or the OA resources offer. So
That's such a good point.
I think it's
Yeah.
just going to further drive people to OA.
Yeah, and I think just from the perspective of the fact that this is how the OA movement started was scientists and researchers going, hey, there's something fishy about how things work, and we would like to see it work differently. So it seems almost a full cycle to kind of come back to this now with a more polished argument after we've been doing this for a while now.
Yeah. And I'll jump into Melissa's question. So this tool is supposed to replace what we have now, databases, because it includes everything. We would need to purchase this. We won't be mad at that. How much is it to subscribe to something like this? Well, first of all, when it comes to the OA collection, while much of your subscription content is increasingly OA, there is not for everything. Not every database is going to have an extremely high OA overlap rate yet. A lot of these databases include things that are never going to be OA, like trade journals and commercial magazines and other
Book
resources.
reviews and yeah.
Yeah, things of that nature. But what our collection analysis, I don't think we really touched on it, but if you go to cloudsource.net, there's a link right on that front page to do a free collection analysis, and we'll tell you, we just ask for a list of your databases and providers, and we will run a comprehensive report that tells you how much of your collection is OA. And if you, we've got right on the screen here, the website cloudsource.net, and we do a weekly webinar that illuminates or dives deeper on everything we've talked about today. But I'll drop into the chat box a link to get pricing information. Sorry, it's hard for me to type and talk at the same time. But sales at cloudsourceoa.com. And all we need is your FTE count, and we can revert a pricing back to you pretty quickly. So thank you for that, Melissa. And that was not an audience plant. And Deborah asked, can this be integrated into Alma Primo? So we are in discussions with Claravit to do some integration. We've already worked with EBSCO to do some integration with EDS as a supplemental search source and to plug into the link resolver, for instance. But CloudSource does come, as you saw, with its own discovery interface. And it also has a backend API. So we've offered to anybody, any of these big providers, access to the API. But keep in mind one important point. The major discovery players, i.e. Claravit and EBSCO, do not really want their database, they don't want the search results to be dominated by OA resources, which is frankly the case nowadays. Most of what you're going to find is OA. And it will hurt their bottom line if suddenly all of that OA was available in their native interface, and customers were saying, now, why are we paying these high prices for databases? We need a reduction, or we're looking at canceling some things. So it's kind of a catch-22 for these big discovery providers. They, again, Their vested interest means that they don't want you to see how much of this is OA. So they're not motivated necessarily to ingest all of our OA content right into their main index. So keep that in mind, but we're doing our best to integrate where we can. We can drop content in the libguides. We provide our own search box. We can put that into the LMS as well. And we can integrate where possible, working around, having it in the Primo central index.
And I will add, just as our partnerships person, that this is where our amazing customers come into play. When we have customers saying, "Hey, we want this," that is where we've gotten our best integration efforts. When we've got, our EDS customers said we were an EDS customer and we're a CloudSource customer, we want them to play nice. That was so much more leverage for us to secure that EDS integration, for example.
Yeah.
So, yep.
Thank you. And then Joe asked, there are some clear advantages for students, instructors, and institutions. Who gets hurt by this? Well, as I just alluded to, a lot of the big publishers know that their financial model is changing and they've got to find new ways to make money rather than just completely reselling this OA content. And increasingly, much of their collections are OA. Like Mariska mentioned, 67%, more than 2/3 of every scholarly article published last year was OA. And that we expect that number to be higher for 2024. So I'd say the publishers might take a hit. The big aggregators who rely on subscription content are going to see a definite hit. But for the end users, the public at large, I can't see any disadvantages to having easy access to this OA data.
Right. And we take our role as both aggregators and largely librarians in this product very seriously, and we financially support all the nonprofits that are doing this work too. So we support DOAB and we support DOAJ and we support a lot of our OER sources. So yeah, we're definitely not out there trying to take advantage of this. We're trying to be part of the solution, not the problem.
That's exactly right. And Arlene, thank you for your comment. Yes, here's that slide you asked to see again. And you can download the slides. Jump in, Ashley and Sabrina. I don't know if they can do it interactively or they're going to get a copy of the slides afterwards.
Sure. Yeah. We'll in our follow-up email, we'll include a link to where to find the slides. And everyone can expect that follow-up email to go out tomorrow morning. And we'll also post both on the registration page.
That's great. All right. So what else do we have here? Amy, we've got a few minutes left. Amy asks, this looks like it's geared towards undergraduate academic libraries. Is there a possibility of developing it for graduate professional libraries like a medical school? Okay, we're still in here. I think we might have lost a Rick. All right. So Amy, right now we have a variety of different, welcome back, Rick.
I'm
I was
back.
taking a look at Amy's question here about it. She says it looks like it's geared towards undergraduate academic libraries. There's a possibility for developing it for graduate professional libraries, like a medical school library. We actually, I highlighted things during this particular session today that talked about mostly our 4 years and our 2-year colleges, but we absolutely have a tremendous amount of materials already for graduate and professional libraries. Gosh, Rick, I feel like we have at least one medical school. Am I wrong on that right now already in our customer base?
We do. It's the hospital system affiliated with West Virginia, University of West Virginia. And there are other consortia that we serve, like in Louisiana, that also have numerous medical schools. So yeah, there are medical schools. There are a number of special libraries that are certainly finding CloudSource OA super beneficial. A lot of the government libraries. We've done a really good job at bringing on government libraries recently.
I will add to this as having worked at a medical library. A lot of the NIH research already NIH research is pretty much government funded and therefore OA mandate. A lot of it does have the embargo right now, but provided nothing changes, the Nelson memo will take that away. We're never going to replace the diagnostic tools that medical libraries use, obviously, because that's very specific. But I think when it comes to the literature, we're going to have the vast majority of it already just because of how much medical research is published under OA licenses. We had a librarian, her entire full-time job was to make sure we were NIH compliant because she had to chase down the doctors and researchers and make sure they submitted their materials. But we're definitely in a good position for graduate, professional, and medical libraries as well.
Great. And how about Chris's question? Getting data on faculty class usage of OERs has been difficult for us. Do you know of some examples or best practices of getting that data? Yeah, I can jump in. Yes, so we have built-in usage reporting for the CloudSource platform, and that includes usage of these OER materials. So you can break it down by OER or report on all usage. And there are multiple levels of counter reporting, and they can be run on demand and exported into spreadsheets or CSV files or multiple formats. So all that is included in the staff tools for CloudSource.
Yeah, and I know usage for OA materials has been notoriously difficult in the past, so hopefully we're able to make that a lot easier.
Yeah, we'll pick up the pace a little bit. Jude asked, I'm in Canada, I'd like to hear about any additional details or options if everything works the same here as in the US and if it can be integrated into Alma Primo. We do have a number of customers in Canada and a sales team in Canada, and I'll actually be there in a few weeks for some on-site meetings, but no barriers there. And we talked a little bit about Alma Primo integration, and we'll gladly work with you to integrate as much as possible with those platforms.
Mm-hmm.
And Jillian asked our library's policy about not paying textbooks as part of our contract.
With the bookstore. That's thank you for chiming in with that, actually. That's extra context I hadn't even thought about.
Yeah, thank you, Jillian. And Melissa said, thank you, back. And those are easy. Amanda, how many of those OA resources were peer reviewed? Well, our attempt is to only present peer-reviewed sources in our aggregation. Now, for the article level, the journal-based content, the primary mechanism is using Crossref as the indicator of peer review. They do a pretty good job of vetting resources and filtering out vanity press and other pirate publications. And then for the OER resources, again, we work with sources that have a clear quality control vetting process, like the Open Textbook Library and OAP and DOAB. So our intent is to only present quality vetted sources. And then further, there are a number of sources in the index that aren't peer reviewed and will never be, like reviews and commercial magazines and things like that.
Sometimes preprints, if you have those turned on. Yeah.
Yeah, but you have high level filters you can employ that will say only include peer reviewed sources in the index or not. So you have that choice as well. Heather asks, thank you. We answered that. Appreciate it. And thank you, Miguel and Arlene. And I think the rest of these are just thank yous. So
you are so welcome. Thank you for being here. We love to have the engagement.
That was really great feedback from the audience.
Great questions. Yeah.
Mariska, you did a wonderful job as usual with your research. So much appreciated. We're lucky to have you.
Well, thank you. It's nice to talk to librarians these days and not just have to bribe them to coming into the library and listen to me go on about open access to a small group and an enclosed room, block the door.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much to Mariska and Rick for taking the time to speak with us today. And thank you to our attendees for your great questions and comments. I'd like to remind our viewers that we did record today's program, so be on the lookout for a follow-up email from Choice and ACRL with a link to the recording and where to access today's slides. Also, if you have a few minutes after the presentation to fill out a brief survey, we would really appreciate it. So thanks again to all of you out there for joining us. We hope you learned something new from the webinar and hope to see you again soon on another session.
Take care, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.